Hello and welcome back to Monument Cycling's podcast. I'm Owen. I'm joined by Harry Johnson. How's it going?
Hello, it's me, Harry. You always start it the same way and I never really know what to say after you introduce me. Did you say the episode? It's episode number 7. Last week we talked about the British Conti Awards. This week is kind of a normal news week. Nothing crazy. We do unfortunately have to talk about Saint Piran for a little bit. And then we will talk about Harry and Charlie, hopefully filling the gap that is left by no Trinity and no Saint Piran and no Conti team at all in the UK. A few signings, another couple retirees. Cyclo-Cross. There was meant to be a national series this weekend, wasn't there? But there wasn't in the end.
It was not.
And we will talk about tv.monumentcycling.com. Owen, why?
Thank you for introing. Why? Because we want to help the British scene. We want to help the grassroots scene in the UK. And Monument Cycling TV is our way of doing that. You can pay a small monthly fee, and that money goes directly to us. We upload extra content to it, and in return, that pays for us to continue what we're doing, helping to spread the word of the British scene and support it in any way we can.
Indeed. Saint Piran. So the latest news, probably the last massive chapter in the story, is that Saint Piran are gone. Essentially, at least the continental team of Saint Piran is gone. I'm sure they're a bike shop, aren't they? That's what the main thing is.
Yeah.
And a cafe and stuff in Cornwall. So I assume that's going to carry on going. But yes, the team, probably what they're most known for, has closed. They put out a statement on social media saying they closed. Apparently they forgot to tell their riders before they put that statement out as well. So just just classy until the very end. So a lot of the riders found out at the same time we did that they'd gone. I think we'd both agree that the writing was on the wall with that after the Cycling Weekly articles and after all the news this year of them being investigated by the UCI from some bikes they stuck some stickers on, and claims of not paying people, being bullies to their staff, their riders, dodgy NDAs. It's not been a great year for Saint Piran, and in extension to that, British domestic bike racing. We'll do a proper deep dive into this in a video on its own that's scripted, because I don't think we're going to be able to do it justice. Kind of just talking off the cuff about it. But what I do want to focus on is the riders that are now without a team for next year. A lot of them, well, I assume all of them, would have signed a contract for 2025, as is kind of normal within cycling, I guess within professional sports. You're going to sign that contract and you're going to have to look for the riders no matter what, whether you know the team's going to be there for next year, until the very last minute, and then suddenly there's no team. The team doesn't exist anymore and the riders have a contract for a team that doesn't exist, which is very stressful and tricky for those riders, because there's not many teams about that have spaces in December. Have you ever been in that position where you've kind of been left in December without a team?
No, never. I wasn't racing at quite as high a level as these guys. I was the one notch down with like Richardson's Trek, but they were always good to their riders. I have a lot of respect for the manager of Richardson's, for instance, and he's pulled the team together for so many years. And the one time when eventually I was no longer on the team, I wasn't quite performing as well as I maybe should have. I was told with plenty of time in advance, and it was a kind of mutual decision at that point, and no hard feelings. I can't imagine how it feels for these riders to just wake up one day, see your team's name trending. Oh, what's going on here? Let me scroll through, and your team's folded. And you've had zero communication from the team management. That's hard. But then all the more incredible that guys like Harry Tanfield have stepped up and said, okay, bet I'll try and make a team myself, which is kind of kudos to them. You raced in France. Was that kind of a mutual understanding, everything there?
Yeah, I think I was similar to you, that probably luckily I never really took the step up to a team that had a roster as such, and kind of fighting for a place in a team. So yeah, luckily I haven't experienced this, but I know obviously I've got lots of friends that have been in similar situations. But you mentioned Harry Tanfield, so that just some of the riders that they have signed for this year, that now we assume are kind of up in the air about next year. You did mention that Charlie Tanfield's going to hoping to start a continental team for next year. The deadline of that was, I guess, yesterday, so we don't know what the status of that is at the moment. Hopefully we'll get an update fairly soon. But riders that like Will Roberts, he's the track rider, isn't he? Like world champion on the track.
Will Tidball is world champion on the track. Yeah, I think scratch race. Like these are high quality riders. They've had like Josh Charlton, wasn't it, who set an individual pursuit world record. So they're not like chumps. These are really good guys who suddenly have to scramble for a team.
Like I don't think it's any controversial take to be not that massissive fan of Saint Piran and the way that it's run, but I'd have nothing against the riders. Like that's very much a level above them. So we've got like Olly Wood, national crit champion from a couple of years ago. Tom Williams, who we've spoken a lot about. He was the British Conti Breakthrough Rider of the Year. He had his big breakthrough in the middle of the year, jumped up to Saint Piran, and now is kind of left. Dylan Wesley, he was out in Spain racing at a very high level. Max Walker has now actually stepped up during 2024 and has gone to, I think, EF Education First for next year at the World Tour. So he's one of the, maybe a potentially lucky one that kind of got out before the implosion.
What will be interesting is how many riders now are without team. And speaking to a few people behind the scenes is, in terms of the racing and the quality of the racing, this will, spread out the riders amongst them. And we were wondering how it will affect 2025 and next season. And you could actually see this really tight racing because these strong riders that all gravitated to one strong UCI team now get spread out amongst all the elite teams instead. And they're all capable of beating each other. And you might end up with this really, really competitive scene. A small silver lining on a pretty rubbish grey cloud.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't even... There's Rowan Baker, probably the biggest name.
Yeah.
Maybe the biggest performances of this year and the year before.
Classic, didn't
Harry Birchall, again, winning. Yeah. They were winning the National Series for fun just a couple of years ago. And then some younger riders as well. But I think... I do think, kind of trying to force myself to think positively, I think this is the first kind of like... 2025 there will be like a power vacuum. Essentially, there'll be a gap where there is not a big team. It will be lots of little... I mean, not little compared to continental teams, of like elite teams with maybe 4 or 5 riders that are fighting. And I do think the racing will be quite good, but I think there will be a power vacuum that will make it create a very good opportunity for another continental team to step into that space. And hopefully do it as something new and something more sustainable than kind of a model that we had from like 2015, 2016 that obviously doesn't work anymore.
Yeah, we do still need, I think, a UCI, that healthy pathway. And it made me question what's the point of a UCI Continental team right now? How many do you really need? Do you need every team in the UK to be a Conti team or a pro team? Or is it okay having just the one, having this pathway through to ride the Tour of Britain, and then everyone's fighting for that? I don't really know. Like, do you have a preference on how many UCI teams there would be in a healthy scene?
I guess just a reflection of how many would be natural. Like, I didn't really have a problem. I think it's natural for it's natural for businesses to fail. Obviously, it's natural for teams to fail. I think if you're going to have, 7 one year, 5 the next year, 7 the next year, 4 the next year, I think that's natural. Obviously, it going from 7, 8 to 0 over the course of a few years is not healthy. I think it just says that it tells us that it needs to be done differently. I think it can be done sustainably. It just it takes something new and different. But there definitely needs to be that step there, especially for the under 23 riders rising up, because you can't go from an elite team. Well, I'm sure people have, but it's not a sustainable ladder of progression to go from elite UK team paying for all your kit, doing like nat bees every week to go up to a UAE. I think then there needs to be that step in between. So hopefully, yeah, we mentioned it a little bit there. Harry and Charlie. It was announced just over 2 weeks ago that they would be hopefully starting their own thing, but they had a very limited time frame to source all the funds and source the sponsors for that to be ready for 2025.
I've been speaking with them a bit behind the scenes because obviously we have a large media reach. It's giving them our numbers and indicating the potential ROI for sponsors. And it felt like he had a lot of positive conversations with people. But, positive conversations are one thing. Getting them to sign on the dotted line and maybe put their money where their mouth is another matter altogether. So, fingers crossed, they'll have sorted something out. I've got pending question with him, so maybe by the time this podcast goes out, we'll actually know.
Yeah, I think it's what the scene needs. Obviously, they're getting on a little bit now. It's kind of, even when I think of them as quite young, Harry.
How do you think that makes me feel? You said earlier, how old are you? I'm older than these guys.
Only just.
Getting on a bit.
But I remember him as a young rider winning the stage of the Tour of Britain. That's what...
Yeah.
I imagine he'd probably wished he went on to a little bit more, but obviously that's an incredible achievement on its own. But they're 28 and 30. They're not kids anymore.
I know what you mean, yeah. Pogacar's 26 or something, isn't he? So...
even he's ancient.
Dear, dear. On the subject of ancient things, British National Road Calendar, which seems to... that segue works. It's been going on for ages. How old is British cycling now? Decades. The National Series calendar has been announced, hasn't it? What do you make of it?
It's just kind of more of the same. I guess it's nice that it's not 0 races like the teams. It's nice. Probably the most notable new information is that there is Southwest races.
Yeah.
So
I actually have family in Dawlish, where one of the National Circuit Series is, and I'm like, well, brilliant. I would say it's really positive to see that we've not lost any. Because Rydale was on the cusp this year. The venue that it was held at kind of pulled the plug on using that venue. But there is a Yorkshire round at around about the same time penciled in, which implies they've found another venue maybe for the Rydale Grand Prix. Maybe it won't be called the Rydale Grand Prix, but it's looking like it'll have the same vibe. Lancaster is down as round 7, which implies that it's been moved a month or two later. This year it was in July. So are they still trying to find the best spot for the race? I'm not sure what that means really.
It is normally a good sign if it's on this first announcement. The calendar tends to be moved around, and a round or two gets added or deleted after this anyway. But if it's on there now, it's a pretty good indication that it's kind of definitely in there. Obviously we've got the women's have 7 rounds, one more round than the men's, as it has done the last few years, with Cycle Classic being the opening women's round, and then the men's, obviously they have their own UCI Cycle Classic later in the year. But yeah, as you said, obviously I've been complaining that there's not enough races in the south, and then of course they add it in Cornwall, which I think is the same distance or the same time it takes to drive to Cornwall as it does up north anyway.
I feel sorry for the guys that are based up north now, but then we've had to deal for years of going a long way up north for them. But it's nice, I don't know who the organizer is of that. It might be like Mid Devon CC, the cycling club down there. They put a lot of time into the sport. There's clearly a strong cycling scene down there, so it makes sense to finally have a round of the series in the south, and let's hope that stays there. I don't think this is going to change how the racing happens, though. Looking at the road series, still pretty much all in the same place. We've still got roughly one a month, or thereabouts. Lancaster Grand Prix potentially moving later into the season doesn't really affect it too much because it actually makes it easier for the riders around the circuit series. Because before it was like, okay, man, we've got this, this one in there. Southwest round maybe is going to take that mantle instead at the end of July.
You mentioned the date, the Dawlish, the one, is...
that's
2 days before... Okay, so I assume they've added that and it's all a part one event. So the Dawlish Grand Prix, the circuit series in the Southwest, is 2 days before the road race in the Southwest.
Yeah, which is Southwest round. So is that also in Dawlish, or is that just in that kind of area?
You kind of assume it's near enough that you can spend a weekend there.
Yes, which the riders will probably appreciate rather than having to jump around. And if they're all going to go down south, might as well get 2 rounds in for it and get your best bang for your buck. Get some value for money while you're while you're down there on a summer holiday. But no, I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be some good racing. The thing that always strikes me actually is Beaumont Trophy and Curlew Cup. They used to be in July-ish. Then they've gone to September this year, and now they're back in August. And it strikes me as odd because, I run the Cambridge Criterium, and we have a date. I can't imagine moving that date at all. I think there's probably one other date in the whole of the Cambridge city calendar that we could possibly put a race on, and they weren't really keen for it. It amazes me that some of these places are able to move around. So often we talk about, the calendar should be more sensible. It should be changed to help the riders or have a better scene. But the reality is you can't do that. But I'm kind of being proved wrong here. If we're looking at that, do you think that we should have more races moving around to create a more cohesive calendar?
I mean, it's definitely positive. There's obviously been thought gone into it. I was just looking at the National Circuit Series has been shrunk from 8 to 6 rounds.
Yeah.
And you've got the Guildford races on the 9th of July, and then a week later you've got Sheffield, and then another week later you've got Colne, and then 3 days after Colne you've got Dawlish. I don't know how far it is to drive from Colne to Dawlish, but it's a long way.
This reminds me of I have a friend in Formula One who's a photographer in Formula One, and it'll be like Miami, and then it'll be Qatar or something. You're going halfway across the world. This is that on a microcosm, isn't it? You're just going up and down.
Exactly. Qatar, Austin, Dawlish, Colne. They're the same kind of...
A few thousand miles away. But that's you hit on something earlier as well. It's gone down from 8 to 6. So we've lost the Beverley and Dudley rounds that were Chris Lawrence's. Now he does a lot he's very outspoken in support of kind of grassroots racing. It'll be really interesting to see why those races aren't on the calendar. Because he normally does a great job of pulling them off, getting councils on board. And Beverley's only been there for 1 year. So did the council not like it? What happened?
I don't know. They might have dropped down to a Nat B. They might have just kind of run as smaller races. There's a massive added expense to running a National Series round, as you'll know. Although obviously your race isn't a National Series, it is a National A. So it could just be cost cutting. But unless we talk to them, we don't know.
Yeah, might be worth reaching out. I'll see what we can do with that.
It's only 5.5 hours to drive from Colne to Dawlish. I thought it was a little bit further than that, to be honest.
Only? Oh my
Colne's
Lord.
a bit further south than I thought.
It is an added, impact on your recovery though when your races are so close. So, maybe some people will travel better than others. I remember last year, Matt Bostock struggled at Guildford, and he just put it down to having a bad day of travelling beforehand. Maybe caught a bit of a cold or something with all the travel and the extra stress. Maybe some of the riders will handle that better than than the others.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'd buy that, to be honest. You're travelling around the UK. You've got riders that are doing World Tour races in China. Like, I don't know. Man up.
We'll put that every time somebody complains about it. We'll have Harry's man up mantra. No, you're right though. It's not 5 hours is bad, but it's not that bad. But it can be the difference, if you're looking at millimeters at the end of a race.
I think obviously that's a bit tongue in cheek. Like obviously there is an impact of travelling, which I complain about regularly. But when I'm complaining about the distances between races and them all being up north, like Bostock and maybe a couple of others kind of sit on their own. I mean, potentially not professional, but you're earning a bit of money from these kind of races. Like you can treat it as you can take it a lot more seriously than if you're just somebody racing for fun. That's like working. Not that I'm not saying that Bostock doesn't work, but like if you're just working and you're racing on the side and you're going to just try and get around in like a top 30, you're not going to be able to make that commitment to drive across the country every couple of days for the national series.
Yeah, that's true. So it might restrict some people from entering, or like, is that what you mean?
Yeah, that's just kind of what I've come back to. Or going back to what I said before, I think there just should be a bit more variety in location. But obviously that's a lot easier said than done. It's easy to say. Like, I mean, I would love, this is maybe a bit in dreamland, but I'd love to see a national series round in London. I don't know, was there a national series crit in London? I know obviously the Tour series was bouncing around there for a while, but
not that I know of. The closest we get right now is the Via Crit, isn't it? Did you race the Via Crit this year?
I did. Although it's more of a bit of fun. It's not. I don't think you could have a serious national crit there. It's very, very technical, like very narrow.
Oh, really?
Not that that's not a great race and doesn't create great racing, but I feel like you need a little bit more room for a serious national crit.
I've been. This is a little bit of a sneak peek, heads up. I've been speaking with some organizer and offering some advice. They reached out, who maybe is in that sort of area. I don't think that they're hot, hot off the press. I don't think we'd be seeing them as a national series this year, but maybe that's one for the future. Maybe we'll
Interesting.
See.
A Monument Cycling podcast exclusive.
Exclusive.
London National Criterium confirmed.
That is not what I said.
Wait, do we know when the Nationals are next year, actually, in 2026?
They've not mentioned it. My assumption is it will be the end of June. That's when it normally is, isn't it?
No, where?
Oh, where? Sorry. Also, no.
Okay. That'd be interesting. I haven't heard any rumours about it, so obviously that kind of fits in with the National Series and the National Circuit. Bits and bobs. It's a kind of another event of a similar sort of level.
Yeah.
Obviously a little bit higher, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But yeah, conclusion overall. What do you make of the calendar overall? I saw a comment on a Cycling Weekly article from the organizer of Tour of the Reservoir, which is a stage race.
It was a stage race.
Okay, it used to be a stage race, which was canned last year or the year before. Obviously, it's not in the calendar now, but apparently there are quite talks that have reached a late stage. What word am I thinking of?
I don't know, quite fruitful, quite strong, quite positive, maybe.
He thinks there is going to be a Tour of the Res next year, which would be awesome because we want a stage race in the UK, but it's currently not on the calendar.
Yeah, so it remains to be seen whether British cycling, if it comes back, I'm sure British cycling would be happy because, as you said, there's no Tour anymore. It was a really hard race. I raced that loads of times. Did terribly every single time. So it'd be nice to see it back on the calendar. Yeah, it's a little bit too hilly for me. I don't even know why I bothered going up there.
We'll get you back for next year. We'll get you on a training plan.
How I went from couch to World Tour Pro in 6 months.
You're going to have to race Cambridge Crit at some point as well.
Nah, it's not going to happen. Ever.
Maybe do like
I know where my level is.
On the sidelines.
No, take away from me is that this is a positive thing. we're seeing a fairly healthy calendar, and things seem to be moving in the right direction, or they've certainly stabilised.
Oh, another final note is that they're literally just looking at the calendar and look at the races. There's a lot of sponsors bouncing around. A lot of them are sponsored names, which is good. I think the more sponsors just looks a little bit healthier. But yeah, I think we've said enough about the calendar.
National scene.
Maybe they'll all get cancelled next week and we'll have to do it again. A little bit kind of individual news. Olly Moore's DS has moved from O'Shea to Das Hutchinson Brother UK, which is a big move for the team and him.
Yeah.
Kind of a, I don't know, statement of intention that they're going to take.
Yeah, they've been making some moves on social media, making some waves. They seem to have, they've always been one of, if not the best team in the UK, and it looks like they have every intention of following through with that again next year. So I'm happy for that. As I said, Olly, before the pod, like Olly Murs, Olly Murs is a musician. Olly Moores. Olly is he's almost like a friend of Monument Cycling in that he guest commentated on the Cambridge Crit. Did a really good job, and straight away it was like, cool, we'll have Olly back on in the future. So it's good to see him making some moves, and it'll be good for Das Hutchinson Brother UK as well. I think he knows his stuff. He knows how to race. I think he's Anna Henderson's partner. So there's a lot of knowledge transfer maybe that can happen. Some World Tour knowledge coming down to Conti team isn't necessarily a bad thing. Well, maybe there'd be a link between the teams. I'm just saying.
Wow.
How about that? That would be nice to see Das Hutchinson Brother UK become a sort of a feeder squad for a World Tour team. That'd be nice.
I think they haven't announced a lot of their signings so far. They've only got 12 riders signed up, but they've still got huge names at Robin Clay, Lucy Lee, Sophie Lewis, all doing very well this year. And I think there's a couple of new names on there as well. But I'm sure we can do a team breakdown after they've announced all their signings. Yeah, good stuff. Max Stedman retired. It was a few weeks ago now, but we haven't spoken about it. Max Stedman, bit of a cult British
cult following. Rider. Yeah, I used to race against him, I think. So he was a good rider, really good rider. And he left the British scene after the demise of with Sun God. Because he came through like that pedal heaven. Canyon with Sun God 8085 funnel when that folded. He was always a lighter climber, so the racing in the UK doesn't really suit that. So I think he went off to some foreign teams and made a really good go of it. So he seemed, I saw his post, he seemed content. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean he should be. I think we've spoken about similar sort of riders that obviously all these riders will start their career at 20 wanting to go into the World Tour, racing the Tour de France, but it doesn't mean you failed if you don't actually get there. Like, his pro cycling stats is stacked. He also won his last race. He's racing a lot out in Turkey. I think he was racing for a Turkish team for a couple of years.
Yeah.
Yes, he was. Yeah, two different.
Antalya.
Yes. He won his last race, which is very a 1.2, which is pretty cool. But he's got GC wins at the Tour of Antalya. Antalya. Tour of Gwangju Bay. He won that twice, 2018 and 17. He won the Tour of Albania. Surely that must be a pretty competitive race. I'm not going to lie, my knowledge of the Tour of Albania is not that deep, but
it's tough racing over there. You get a lot of the Asia Tour and things like that are really difficult areas, and if you get some of like the Eastern European teams, like, they're hard races. So he just disappeared off of the British scene and went and did a really good job elsewhere. The other thing, absolute shout out to his mum, who has been a long time fan of like everything British scene. She's been a fan of Monument Cycling, and funnily she was a paying customer of Monument Cycling TV. Because even the races where Max wasn't racing, she wanted to watch them, wanted to support. So, that family's been in and around the sport for a really long time.
He just seems like a really nice guy as well. He's done a few videos with GCN. Maybe that's a career change for him. I know GCN like snapping up retired British pro cyclists.
Yeah, that you heard it here first.
He was one of the riders that went really well on those Everest and challenges during COVID. I don't think he ever quite cracked the record, but he got very close, I think. Yeah,
he was a good guy.
Hopefully he's happy with his decision.
Hopefully, yeah. And kind of coming up as well, as one door closes, another opens on potentially another career. Cyclo-Cross National Championships, whose career is going to be kick-started by that. For me, we've got the Thomas Mean, Cameron Mason battle happening once again.
Is that 1 year that's been going on, or is it 2 years now?
No, it's like 2 or 3 now. Because they're only 1 year apart. I always think that they're way like different ages, but they're pretty much the same age, and it means every single year we get this battle. Thomas Mean took it in maybe 2020 something, like the early 2020s, when it was down south, and there was this mega tight battle. Like they're almost like shoulder barging each other in overtakes, like back and forth. Then lost. So 2023-24 Cyclo-Cross National Championships, Cam Mason rocked up, and he was just like another level. Tom went out really hard to try and get the jump on him, and it just like spectacularly backfired. And Cameron Mason at some point just overhauled him, and like it was never in doubt. And Cam went on to have a really good season. But this year, I think Cam, by his own admission, doesn't feel quite happy with his season. Thomas Mean, on the other hand, is like smashing it, and I think that we can end up with a really, really tight battle. I don't know what that means for Tom's career, though. We've spoken about him before. He is by far and away the best cyclocross rider domestically. Does he want to step up, maybe?
He is the best currently racing British cyclocross rider. Obviously, I think if Tom Pidcock started doing some more cyclocross, he might overtake. But he's not racing cyclocross at the moment, so we have no idea. He also, Thomas Mean, he got second in a C1. I don't really understand how the classifications work. As far as I can understand it, C1 is more competitive than C2. So he got second place on an Italian C1 race, which is the same classification as Koppenberg Cross, which I'm sure a lot of us would have heard about. So
yeah, and that's one actually that Tom's actually done really well in the past and this year. I think he was 11th this year. He's been racing the World Cups, and him and Cam Mason are always like, trading places. One will be 9th, one will be 10th, one will be 6th, 7th, like that sort of thing. So there's not much to separate them. We'll see what that actually means when it comes to the national championships, because it's one thing to have this consistency throughout the year and throughout the season, but then it's, can you deliver on the day? And a great example of that is guys like Remco Evenepoel. They deliver on the day. Mathieu van der Poel, they deliver on the day. And the joke is that like Wout van Aert delivers throughout the season as an incredible rider, and then it'll be the one big goal. He'll just be off slightly on that day. So whether that's the case for these two.
Just hope that Wout van Aert doesn't listen to the pod. It looks like, looking at the calendars between Thomas and Cameron, that they've kind of, I assume not intentionally, but they're kind of split between different focuses. Obviously, the different level of team they're riding for. Cam Mason's doing more World Cups. Latest race for Cam Mason, he got 15th at the World Cup in Dublin, which, wasn't he fighting for the win in these World Cup races like a year or two ago?
He was definitely top 5, I swear, with some of the big three, with some of the, like Wout van Aert, Mathieu van der Poel in there a few years ago. But I've been, Cam, I've interviewed him plenty of times. I've interviewed him for for videos on Monument Cycling, and he's a really good guy, and he's quite open on social media. He vlogs, he kind of lets people in, and he doesn't seem happy with this season. I've never raced at that level. I have no idea of what it takes to get good enough to do that. So I have no idea of like what can go wrong. Is it a case of you miss a week's training 2 months ago and that just screws you over? I don't know what results in that.
I'm always blown away about how tight these World Cup races is. Like, I'm used to looking at like local cyclocross races, and you see like 2 minutes between every rider basically, and then maybe you have a battle between a few of them. But 2 minutes for an hour-long World Cup cyclocross race separates 17th and 1st. Like,
really?
I mean, I'm not a cyclocross expert, but surely that's not that much to take.
No.
That's well within a lap. Like, that's looking at this like a quarter of a lap.
You can lose 2 minutes with a mechanical in cyclocross. You could go from first place to dropping out of the top 20.
Yeah, so even though it's obviously not what Cam Mason wants at the moment, I don't think he's like suddenly dropped form and he's awful compared to what he was before. I think what I'm trying to say is that I think it's going to be a very big fight for the national champs when we get there at the end of January. End of January?
Beginning of January. Like
beginning
fifth,
of January.
5th, 6th, 7th-ish. I kind of feel sorry for the guys who don't have the resources and haven't had a chance to go and race World Cup. It's like, oh yeah, brilliant. I'm doing really well on the national scene, and you rock up and there's 2 guys who are like smashing World Cups week in, week out, or C1 races. So it's nice to be able to race against them though. Just means there might be a 2-tier race on the day. We'll see.
Exactly. Were you meant to be at the National Series just gone?
Yes, I was. So the round in Clanfield, which I was really looking forward to, organizer has put on like this great event. He supports a lot of the local scene and really wants to like build up these races. And then this storm like absolutely wrecked it. Trees came down overnight on the course, like on the finishing straight onto the barriers, and absolutely no chance he could run. So correct call to cancel the race, but such a shame because I was looking forward to it. I was like halfway there. I was an idiot. I don't know why. My wife was like, Owen, why are you driving down there? It's going to get cancelled. I'm like, I have to go just in case. And then I got the call halfway down and somebody was like, yeah, FYI, it's been cancelled. I'm like, I shall go home to safety now.
Yeah, I mean, it takes a lot to cancel a cyclocross. You obviously would have seen pictures and videos of Wout van Aert sprinting through the snow on some races and ice and like storms and rain and all sorts. But there is a point eventually when you can't risk a tree falling down on a rider in the middle of a race, which is a massive shame. Yeah, as you said, I know they'd put a lot of it's a local race to me. I know the organisers put kind of years of organising into this, and yeah, sometimes it just vanishes, which is a massive shame.
I fully expect it to be back next year, though. I don't think the organiser's going anywhere. He plays a huge part in the sport. I think he plays a huge part in the Solent Pirates Cycling Club down there. Has helped create a pathway for a lot of people to get into the sport. So I fully expect it to be back next year. Just a shame we have to wait that long, really.
Yeah. What's the next round now?
It is the national championships and then Bradford.
It's the national champs. There's no national series between now and the national champs.
I don't think there is.
Oh, that's a bit disappointing.
I hope we find out. Yeah, Owen, you've got one tomorrow.
That wasn't meant to be a gotcha question. That was a.
Yeah. This isn't British Cycling asking me, hey, are you meant to be at a race?
There's one right now, isn't there?
I don't think so. Hold on, National Trophy 2024. Boom. Let me please double check. We're safe. No, it is Tong in Bradford is on the 4th and 5th of January, and Cyclo-Park National Championships is the 11th and the 12th of January.
Okay, so there is one between here and okay.
Yeah.
Even is it not? Okay, I suppose 5 rounds. That's not.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I think cyclocross is a great way to get into the sport, but you seem to have less people wanting to run a national trophy, whereas on the road, it's like this big aspiration is, I want my race to be a national series. If you're running a town centre crit, I want it to be in the circuit series. There's loads of cyclocross racing around. I think they're just happy with the way it is. But what is worth mentioning is that Hope put a huge amount into the sport, as a company anyway. They sponsor a factory racing team, and now they have the Hope Supercross League, which is, a really big 4-race event. And, that it's not part of the national series, but you actually make the calendar a lot bigger by having events like that. It doesn't have to be a national series event. You can still put on a big event like we've done with Cambridge. It's not a national series, but it's of the same level. So the quality is there. Mm-hmm. And we'll see what they want to do with that next year. That'll be, again, another one that's it's got the backing of Hope. They're an incredible company. So should be good as it grows in the future.
Definitely. I've just noticed that Thomas Mine did a mean or mine?
I am 99% sure it is mean. I will answer.
Okay. I thought so too, but I think my brain reset there. He did a cyclocross race in October called Robot Land Cyclocross.
Oh my god, that sounds amazing.
That's so Belgian.
Was it in Belgium?
Yeah.
Man, I love that.
But
I'm going to change the name of the Cambridge.
There's local cyclocross races in the UK. I didn't want that to be a comment on only being 5 rounds in the national series. There is cyclocross racing everywhere in the UK. It's all run by amazing people. Like you said, it's really easy to get into. It's pretty safe. You normally have a soft landing. Obviously, people still break their arms sometimes, but apart from that, it's normally safer than road racing.
It's a great way. Yeah,
it's a good way to pick up skills. Like I said with hill climbing, check it out. It's a lot more accessible and easy to get into than road racing. How would you say 100%. The national series has gone so far as a whole? Obviously, you've been to 3 rounds now, all won by the same 2 riders.
I think Thomas Means won them all, and maybe on the women's side as well. Alderney Baker's won 2. I don't think she's won 3. He says, but no, it is becoming apparent that there's like 1 or 2 riders who are head and shoulders above the rest. I cannot see. Well, actually, that said, this last round that we had in Paignton, Torbay, was the closest Thomas Mean has come to really facing some stiff opposition. The Spectra guys, they have like strength in numbers. So Jensen Young went out first. He's a really good rider. He goes out hard. Thomas Mean has to close that down. Then you've got Toby Barnes and Dan Barnes on the same team, can shadow Tom. And those team tactics actually almost paid off. They didn't in the end, but maybe it will work in the future. And on the women's side, Alderney Baker coming of age, as it were, like she's gone from winning the series without ever winning a race to, which is I think last year or the year before, to winning like 2 in a row. So it's really positive.
Yeah,
really
the third round was won by Anna Flynn ahead of Alderney Baker
at Torbay.
And Thomas beat Toby by 10 seconds. So that's not that's not
come
big,
down from like a minute to
calling
10
back
seconds.
to the World Cup rounds being separated by essentially 2 minutes on half the field. 2 minutes at the national series separates first to fourth. So it's
it's a big difference in ability. There's kind of this tier at the top, and then a lot of others. It'd be really nice to see a real strong cyclocross scene with big strength and depth, as you say, 2 minutes between the top 20. That would be sick. I'd be really interested. Really, really big supporter of that.
Exactly. That covers, unless you've got anything else to talk about the British scene, that covers all of our British.
That's good.
Cycling.
We did that for SEO, just getting the word British in there as much as possible.
I don't think there's much people searching for British cycling at the moment. Isn't that the problem?
Probably.
This is for the SEO. I want to talk about bikes. Colnago.
Yep.
Colnago. This has nothing to do with British scene. I thought I'd just kind of sneak this into the running order.
Yeah, I'm down for this.
Colnago Colnago, sponsor of UAE Team Emirates, sponsor of Tadej Pogacar, basically. UAE Team Emirates, or the company that owns UAE Team Emirates, owns Colnago, essentially to create a bike that's as fast as possible, so Tadej Pogacar wins as many races as possible. They first came out with the TT bike a year or two ago, and that's fairly widely accepted as the best TT setup in the sport. The riders win a lot of TT races. It's very fast. And now they have released their aero bike, which is... I mean, there'll be a picture up on screen right now.
It's radical.
Yeah. It looks awful, and I love it.
Oh my God. It looks like a concept bike, doesn't it?
Exactly. Yeah.
You'd see this pre-production as a concept bike, and they've just actually run with it.
It looks like... I mean, I'm not an aerodynamicist. I don't actually have any stats behind me. It's just kind of second-hand information that I've picked up from years of trying to get faster on a bike. It looks like they've completely dropped form of how it looks of style, and have just made the fastest bike possible to race that saves them as many watts as possible. Which I love. I really appreciate that kind of pure function, it just has one purpose, and that's racing as fast as possible. Because you've got the basic... the down tube is really close to the front wheel. So that I think that creates a really efficient airflow over the front of the bike. And the rear... The seat tube, I guess the separated seat tube, hugs the rear wheel, which I think is also quite aero. But the tubes aren't very thick. They're quite thin for an aero bike, which I assume is to make it more stable and easier to ride when it's a bit windy, and faster to ride when it's a bit windy.
Yeah, the thing that amazes me is they've gone with like a split top tube. You know, I don't know how to describe it. It's got like, normally a top tube is straight. And this has like a definitive like bend in it, a corner in your top tube. I can only assume, because Colnago's like pride themselves on being these beautiful, like, they're like Ferraris, you know, they're like a masterpiece of engineering. So, like, to drop that entirely and go pure function over form is... They must have a very fast bike to be willing to do that, which scares me, because can you imagine if Tadej Pogacar has a bike that's like, you know, 5 watts faster than everyone else, on top of the fact that his legs are 10 watts faster than everyone else, 20 watts faster than everyone else. He's going to be so fast.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it there that Colnago, you know, traditionally this Italian, you know, bougie, high-end, fancy, beautiful race bike, you know, famed for the lugged kind of carbon bikes of the last few years. I think it's like the C50, C60, or whatever it is. Probably their most famous kind of race days were Mapai back in the day, on like Paris-Roubaix races. But they have made a couple of really funky bikes in the past. There was one I remember, I think they made one custom for somebody, and it's like just really long for Paris-Roubaix, like it's a good like half a metre longer than it should be, for, I guess, stability. They probably thought it was fast at the time. I think it was Colnago that had the Paris-Roubaix bike that had the suspension forks.
Oh, was it? Oh my God!
This definitely it is not completely separated from maybe what they've done in the past. But yeah, so, I love it. I think it. Yeah. I think that's what bikes should be.
Yeah, I love it. I am torn, because I do always love having a brand that is like pure form over function. Not entirely, you know, like, but I like a brand that, you need these brands that are insane with their ideas, and then you need these brands that are like beautiful. And if it's not the fastest bike in the world, I'm going to be very upset, because Colnago are those beautiful bikes. So fingers crossed. And I have zero issues with Pogacar being on the fastest bike and dominating everyone. maybe it's a hot take, but I love to see Pogacar smashing everyone. Like, it makes me think I'm living through the Eddie Merckx era that I've got this nostalgia for that I never experienced. Now I can experience it and tell my grandkids, I was here when Pogacar soloed for 100 kilometers to win his 10th World Championships.
I mean, I think the luxury of being Colnago, being owned by the race team that they sponsor, basically, is that there's no reason for them to push out a bike if it's not finished or if it's not fast. Like
I can't imagine Pogacar's going to accept a bike that's not fast for the sake of it.
Yeah, I would not be very surprised at all if it turns out it is fast. Doing a bit of digging, I don't think it was Colnago that had the suspension forks. It looks like Bianchi. Lots of Bianchis with drop bars and suspension forks at Roubaix.
Again, another beautiful bike manufacturer.
But I guess Bianchi have also kind of went the same way with I can't remember the name of the Bianchi bike that came out a few years ago, but it looks absolutely awful. The really weird stem that kind of goes up and the bars kept breaking on it. I think it was like Hugo Hofstadter or someone where the bars kept snapping. That I don't like. I think that is just ugly for the sake of being ugly and new. Whereas it seems like the Colnago, like I said, they just went, build the fastest bike possible.
Yeah. Dan Bigham's going to be drooling over it if it is.
If it's got 20 centimetre handlebars, maybe.
Okay, well, on that note then, that seems like a perfect time to outro and talk a bit about Monument Cycling TV. Harry, it's your turn. Why should people subscribe to Monument Cycling TV?
Oh, I'm not very good. This is your baby. This isn't my baby. It's Monument's subscription service. You give us a little bit of money, and we'll give you more content about the British scene, more coverage at races, more behind the scenes, interviews, all of that fun stuff. Did I miss anything there?
No, that's about it. So if you want to support us and see a little bit more and support what we do, please head over to tv.monumentcycling.com. And in the meantime, thank you very much for joining us. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, and we will see you next time.
Goodbye.